So Cowboy came over from the WEC, and he had some really tough fights in the WEC. I mean, what was his record? I did write it down. 6-3 in the WEC with a no contest. But then if you go down and you look at the guys that he fought before he arrived in the UFC, so you've got, Danny Castillo, Rob McCullough, Jamie Varner, James Krause, Ben Henderson twice, Jamie Varner again, Chris Hordecki, another killer from back in the day. Like, he was fighting UFC level opposition at lightweight before he arrived in the UFC. When he made his debut at UFC 126 against Paul Kelly from Liverpool, tough, great hands, big power. Definitely worth a watch that fight is, because the Cowboy that we know now is not a great deal different to that version. He started off with a quick level change, put the fight on the floor quickly, and was able to maintain it for a period of the first round. In the stand-up ranges, though, he was struggling a little bit. He was getting cracked with some big shots from Paul Kelly, but then the opportunity came down to put the fight on the floor again, which he did. And the thing I always go back to this. People, when you talk about Cowboy, they go, he's got great kickboxing. He's a kickboxer. But we forget how good his ground game is as well. It's always there for him to fall back upon, and we've seen him do it several times before. Times when he's been up against someone who is just a powerhouse that he's trying to take his head off. I mean, Mike Perry's a great example. Someone who's really trying to hurt him, and he's able to fall back on that really strong ground game that he's got. Now, I don't think he's going to take Joe Lauzon down, because I think that would put him in a tangle that is very, very difficult to unthread. But to have it there is going to be very, very valuable for him, because most likely Joe Lauzon's going to try and put him in some kind of submission at some point. So that awareness is going to be a real benefit to him. This is the level change. So Paul Kelly's been lighting him up. He's just landed a big left hook, actually. And as he steps on to throw another big power shot, here comes his big left hook to the body. Cowboy level changes, hooks, trips, and puts him on the floor. And from this point, he works around, he passes his half guard, he gets into a mount position. As Paul Kelly starts to scramble, he clamps onto him and starts to land ground and pound, which then forces Paul Kelly to turn. And, really, really good back control, as we always see from Cowboy. Punches that arm under the neck as Paul Kelly's trying to deal with this body triangle, which is causing him issues. And as they rock up, Cowboy just punches that straight through. And there's his rear naked choke finish. And that's his UFC debut right there. A really good performance. It was a fight of the night. I remember watching it myself and thinking, wow, this is... Because to be honest, I was expecting Cowboy to be able to beat Paul Kelly. Purely because the level that he'd been fighting at. And the fact that, Paul Kelly is a striker, and Cowboy's got great striking. I expected Cowboy to be able to better him on the feet. In actuality, he needed his ground game for it. But the important thing is that we've seen both sides of both guys. We know that Joe Lauzon's got a wild ground game, but he made his debut with striking. We know that Cowboy's got great striking, but he won his UFC debut with his ground game. So both of these guys are veteran mixed martial artists, is the point I'm trying to make. If Cowboy is able to establish a bit of distance in this fight, and if he is able to slow it down, that's where the head kicks come into play. And this is another part of the reason why I wanted to show you some of these. Is we're celebrating the best things about these guys. We're at probably the last handful of fights of both of these guys' careers. Joe Lauzon's had 43 fights. Cowboy's had 54. They've been fighting at a high level for a long time. They've both taken a lot of damage. They've both been stopped a few times. They can't do this forever. So while they're doing it, and while they're about to face one another, which I think is a very well-matched fight, we've got to celebrate the things that make these guys so good and the reasons why they've been fan favorites for so long. And for me, Cowboy is probably one of the best high kick martial artists in the sport of mixed martial arts. There are, Edson Barbosa, Wonder Boy, you're looking at a very elite level of striker when people can land consistent head kicks. And Cowboy's got quite a few. One of my favorites, and one that's most applicable in my eyes to this fight, is against Jim Miller. And it was a bit of a weird one, this, because he landed a front kick, and you could see that the ball of the foot really caught Jim Miller in the midsection. And Miller was hurt, but Murgliata thought it was a groin shot, so he stopped it briefly, saw the replay, and was like, hang on a minute, that was a good shot. You can go again. So Jim Miller, at this point, was already hurt with a body shot and had not yet recovered. So then Cowboy starts to march him down and work that midsection over again. And this is where building a conversation with striking is really evident with Cowboy. And when you've got a high-level striker against someone that's not quite a high level in Jim Miller, those conversations kind of go over Jim Miller's head, especially when he's reacting out of pain. So what we see from this one with Cowboy is he jams him another time with that big shot to the midsection and just keeps chipping away at him. But you can see Miller's hands are down now. You can see he's throwing haymakers, trying to, these are the moments where Joe Lauzon backed up against the fence, feeling under pressure. He does start winging these wild shots. And Cowboy does get out of the way of him because he has got good eyes and good reaction times. And that's when he starts setting him up for these big shots, these big head kicks. Because Lauzon does get kind of low and he does shift his head from side to side, especially if he's winging punches. These are the kind of shots that Cowboy's going to be able to set him up with. And this was just a lovely finish. I mean, he backed him against the fence. And something that we'll see Cowboy do a lot, we're watching this rear hand. Most of the time when Cowboy lands a head kick, it's because people are reacting to his hands first. They'll go, ha, or move the hand, or try and swipe the punch that's coming, or that thinks coming, that never does. Like, watch this hand fire out, and watch the backhand of Jim Miller as this happens. You can see he's moving this hand away. He's patting that hand down because he's expecting that cross to come out. But what you'll notice is that it removes the guard from this side. Like, there's now nothing guarding the side of Jim Miller's head. Had Cowboy just thrown the kick, it may not have got through. It may have just landed on the guard. But because he throws the right hand first, and it's just a flick, it's just enough to get Jim Miller reaching and open up that target on the side of his head. Lovely. And not in any way accidental, because it's repeated over and over again in his career. Look, there it is. You can see the point where Miller bites on that right hand. The right hand comes out, but what he doesn't realize, and it's almost like there's a bit of string attached between the foot and the wrist. As the wrist goes out, it starts to pull the foot around with it. Hand goes out, and the foot's now left the floor. The guard's already started to be removed from Jim Miller. He makes contact with the hand, but he's still reaching, and there's no guard on that side of his head. So he gets a face full of shin. There we go. And like I said, here's another example of it. You can see the reaction that he's getting out of Jim Miller. I mean, this is just over and over again. I think the next one's Adriano Martins. Melvin Gillard. Common opponent. Same thing. Lead foot. Fires the lead hand. So he's firing this lead hand over the shoulder of Melvin Gillard, which is making Melvin Gillard slip to the side of it. Slip to miss the jab. Bang! Right across the side of his head. Because, of course, he sees this jab coming out. He's expecting that to be fully extended. He's expecting that fist to end over here somewhere because he thinks that jab is going for his face. In actuality, the jab is not even going to land with the arm fully extended, but that's never the point. The point is to get him to move his head onto that kick. Beautiful work. Same thing with Martins. Here's the right hand. Right hand comes out, the hand reaches, the head kick lands. I mean, it just couldn't be more obvious in some of these, could it? Same, almost identical to Jim Miller. The hand's reaching, trying to stop that cross coming in. Opens up the target on the side of the head. And my favourite of all of them, as if that wasn't beautiful, is the Matt Brown one. I mean, look at the timing on that. Because what you can see here is Matt Brown's dropped. He's throwing a jab to the body. And Cowboy throws his jab out over the side of Matt Brown's head. And you'll see Matt Brown just dip a little bit further. He goes to throw the body. He sees the lead hand of Cowboy coming out. Now look where his head is here. He drops his head a little bit further. Now it's here. And the target is open for him. Very, very subtle movements. But any time Joe Lauzon is at the arm's length or slightly further out, He's at danger of this kick. Here's one more example. One more opportunity to see it. See Matt Brown step hard with his lead leg and drop his level a little bit to go for the body. Sees the hand coming out, drops his head out the way of it. And there it is. I mean, Rakic Mano is another good example of the same thing. People moving their head out of the way, out of the way of a punch that they perceive is coming, then onto a kick. The best thing for Cowboy to do right now would be to prepared for a ferocious start and try and stifle it and slow it down as best he can. If he panics and engages, it's only going to get worse for him. If he's able to slow it down and drag it out a little bit and get Joe Lauzon to start reaching, then he can start getting him to pay for that chaos, because Cowboy is a great striker. He's got good knees and good elbows on the inside. He's got good boxing. His main thing is his kicking game, because he can work people's midsection, he can bring their hands down, then he sets up that head kick. He's got, I wrote it down, 6 head kick knockouts in his career. And it's ambidexterity as well. It's not one side or the other. It's not a particular type of head kick. He has the same ability to set people up for head kicks regardless of what they're expecting or where they are in the octagon. This, for me, is where the gaps in Joe Lauzon's striking game can be problematic for him. Because if he does find himself struggling to get the fight to the floor, if he shoots a couple of times and Cowboy just disengages and brings him back to his feet, eventually those wide shots of Joe Lauzon are going to be easy for Cowboy to start picking him off.